As I've been emphasizing about the fifth age of globalization, the age of transoceanic empires, there was a dramatic acceleration in Europe's technological development, its scientific capacity, and its military might. This began with the great events of Columbus's voyage to the Americas and Vasco da Gama's voyage around the Cape of Good Hope, but it accelerated thereafter. And one of the most notable and fundamental global processes was the interaction of the rise of European empires and the scientific and technological revolutions that took place in Europe. And this is what I would like us to focus on in this class. What we see is the leadership of world technology pass from Asia and the Arab lands for a significant time to Europe. And this passage of leadership to Europe begins really around 1500 with the new transoceanic empires, but then it widens significantly after. This is an age of divergence, meaning that Europe soars forward in technological and scientific capacity compared with the rest of the world. Before 1500, China very arguably was in the lead on so many crucial technologies, on printing and gunpowder and the compass and paper currency and organization of the state, paper making, movable type, so many fundamental technologies, great ocean navigation as in the voyages of Admiral Zheng He in the first half of the 15th century. So the rise of European scientific and technological leadership is even more stunning when put in that comparative perspective. What is very important and subtle and interesting for us to understand is the interrelation between the age of discovery, especially of the Americas, and the breakthroughs of science. It's not a simple relationship, but I think it is a relationship linked by ideas. When the Americas first became known to the Europeans, this opened up the mind. These lands were not supposed to be there. They weren't mentioned in the scriptures. They weren't part of what was known or thought to be known about God's plan. There were new animal species, new plant species, wholly new geography, new peoples who were not mentioned in the Bible. And so this absolutely forced a fundamental rethinking of what was known, how it was known, how one could come to know things. And I believe that that basic mind-expanding and eye-opening reality of the early 16th century played a huge role in the advancement of science and in the advancement of knowledge more generally. Of course, it's very complex. Many things were going on as well. The Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther's 95 Theses posted to the door in Wittenberg challenged papal authority and challenged, in fact, the authority of the church's rulings and also of scholastic knowledge in the church-led universities. The turmoil of politics in Europe meant also opening for thinkers or inventors. It gave a high premium on those who could make technological advances in military hardware as well, which definitely meant that there was an arms race in Europe and a technology race alongside the arms race. There were the discoveries that had come from the East, astronomical knowledge that then were used by the astronomers in the West and Copernicus and others to rethink what was known about the universe. And it was, of course, in the 16th century that Copernicus first proposed his heliocentric theory of the solar system, that the Earth and the other planets orbit the sun, which was heretical from the point of view of Christian teachings. So the 1500s were a time of tumult, but in my view, the discovery of the Americas was a fundamental part of that tumult. This was a new age, and it required new thinking, and it opened up the space for new kinds of knowledge. What we see is tremendous advances starting in the 1500s and accelerating in the 1600s and accelerating more in the 1700s in so many areas of scientific knowledge like astronomy, physics, mathematics, and in applied areas like ocean navigation or ballistics for military purposes. And that interplay of the scientific revolution and the technology advances is also a fundamental dynamic that is very particular in Europe. Again, Europe isn't the first place to innovate. Innovations have been underway since the first age of globalization and even before that. But the acceleration of innovations after 1500 was astounding. One of the most important insights about technology and how it could change the world came from the politician, statesman, and philosopher in Britain, Francis Bacon, in the late 1500s and the early 1600s. Bacon envisioned a world of technological advance, really perhaps the first person to think about technology as fundamentally transforming society, and that concerted human effort, government-led, could promote that technological advance. And Francis Bacon did something even more than that. He laid out a framework for how to achieve this advance using the new systematic experimental method. So he called on state-supported experimentation to unveil the secrets of nature and to harness the laws of nature for technology. And he coined a phrase that became at the center of European pursuits for the centuries to follow, and that is that knowledge is power. In 1597, he wrote in the Latin that knowledge itself is power, and one of his assistants in the next century, Thomas Hobbes, the famous British philosopher, coined the exact phrase that knowledge is power. But that idea that the systematic pursuit of knowledge is not only to open the book of nature, as it was called, but also to create state power, was itself a kind of new, crucial idea, and one taken very much to heart by Europe's leaders. What we see in this period is state patronage of science. We see the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire supporting leading scientists of the day, leading astronomers, giving them observation laboratories where they can study the heavens. We see the formation of new institutions like the Royal Society in Britain to bring together the early modern scientists to read papers and to pursue scientific knowledge together. We see that this patronage of the sciences continues to develop in the 1600s and then even more in the 1700s as Europe enters what is known to us today as the Age of Enlightenment, a period in which leading thinkers across Europe put forward a scientific vision for the future, a more secular vision, a more interconnected vision, and in which these thinkers in France and Britain and Germany and Italy and Russia were deeply interconnected in correspondence, in visits, in travel, and in the exchange of information. And this explosion of scientific and technological knowledge changed how philosophers would think about society itself. Where does power originate? Is the king's power the divine right of the monarch, or is it a human construct that should be subject to rational change? And of course, that new secular way of thinking was a major impulse to pivotal political events in Europe, most fundamentally to the French Revolution in 1789 and all that followed. So the opening of the Americas, the discovery of the sea routes, the navigation, the colonization, the European imperial rule not only changed the world economy directly, not only created the beginnings of global capitalism, not only led to institutions of horrendous cruelty like the global trade in slaves and especially the African slave trade, but it gave an impulse to new forms of thinking and notably to scientific and to technological advances. Well, we're going to visit some of the places where this new thinking emerged so that we can see firsthand with our own eyes some of the breakthrough sites that gave rise to the new scientific and technological age, especially in Europe. We're going to visit Oxford, where Francis Bacon had his thoughts and where the great library at Oxford collected the global knowledge and gave a major opportunity and impulse to further scientific investigations. We'll go to the capital of the Holy Roman Empire at the end of the 16th century with Emperor Rudolf, who moved the capital of the Holy Roman Empire temporarily from Vienna to Prague, where he sponsored leading-edge scientific research, including new breakthroughs in astronomical observations of Kepler and Brahe that would then play a role in Newton's scientific revolution in the following century. We'll visit Vienna, where Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Joseph II, the leaders of the Habsburg Enlightenment, were great patrons of the arts and great patrons of the sciences, and indeed tried to instill a scientific way of governing society. And we will visit Paris, the site of the French Revolution, where we will see before our eyes the places of transition and transformation from the kingdom and empire of Louis XIV at Versailles and Louis XVI, today's Louvre in Paris, to the very places where the French Revolution took place and the rights of man were first proclaimed. And we'll be able to compare those sites with what we see in Asia at the time, because China, for all its former leadership, became dependent on Western scientists to know where the advances were taking place as Jesuit scientists came to China to bring the news of new advances in mathematics and in astronomy. And at the same time as China was more closed, Japan also had largely closed itself off from Western knowledge. Not entirely, but enough so that by the middle of the 19th century, both China and Japan were far behind the West in scientific and technological capacities, and hence in military power. And that played the next role in the phase of global geopolitical history.